Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Sergey Oganisyan. Docudays Film Festival is starting in Kyiv this spring. It focuses on problems of human rights not only in Ukraine but all over the globe. In the next 10 minutes we are going to talk about the festival and the issue of human rights with the coordinator of the Human Rights Program, Nadiya Chushak. Nadiya, thank you very much for coming here.
Thanks for inviting.
So, Ms. Chushak, starting off with the issues that you and your associates are going to discuss, what are the main problems you think the world is facing right now?
Well, I think that maybe we'll start with the most hot and controversial topic is an issue of migration, right? Because people nowadays are talking a lot about so-called migrant crisis. And I mean, the events of the last few days in Belgium, they sort of again brought up this problem to people's attention.
Yes, you mean the terrible terroristic attacks.
Terroristic attacks, and many people start blaming migrants for this. Like, for us, this is a big problematic tendency, right? So during our film festival, we are going to organize a special screening of the special selection of films which are dealing with the problem of the migration, so-called constructed problem of migration.
Constructed?
Well, because, you know, what we are trying to say is that maybe migration per se is not a problem, right? We think migration is a problem, but it's not there, right? What is a problem are rather some more global processes of fight for power between different global players, uneven economic development, uneven access to the freedom of movement. So the migration is just a symptom of some broader problem, right? So our special film program Wayfarers it's going to show 4 films which are going to deal with one of the most important issues nowadays. And then we'll also have the discussions that are going to follow up the films with invited experts, and also a separate discussion within our human rights program, which is actually called like that. It's called the Migrant Crisis or a Crisis of Solidarity. So we're going to talk there, not because this is an issue which is troubling not only world at large, but also Ukraine, because Ukraine also has its issue with the internally displaced people. And we can see that actually many people in Ukraine also lack solidarity towards these people.
Are you going to discuss this problem in Ukraine too? The conflict in the East, I mean, the people caught in war, not only the locals, but also soldiers, but also prisoners of war. I think their rights are being violated too.
Definitely, we are going to talk about this too, especially the, quite a few issues that we are going to discuss within our human rights program, but actually some of them are connected to our film program, because that's actually what we're trying to do in our festival. We screen films, but then we also organize the following up discussions or round tables within the human rights program, so that people who come to see a film and they get interested in some sort of a problem, they can later visit some broader discussions to get more information from the experts dealing with these issues on some more profound level. So when it comes to the issue of, for instance, people who suffered from the conflict in east of Ukraine, we're going to have a number of events dedicated to that.
Like what?
Like, for instance, some of them, and I'm very happy that we have them within our program, they are very hands-on, very practical events, workshops for people who need to protect their own rights as a result of the conflict in the east of Ukraine. We are talking about people like anti-terrorist operation participants, because usually we think of them, oh, these are heroes. We all love them, but then we tend to forget that they also have problems when they come back to real life here. So
what you're saying is that Ukraine is not doing enough to help them?
Well, I think that's a big statement and a very generalized one, right? Because definitely there are very important initiative groups and volunteer movements and NGOs who are doing their best to help these people and to protect them. When it comes to the level of the state support, some profound and systemic state support, in my personal opinion, it's not present at the level that we do need. Because obviously, for instance, when you look at the issue of the psychological rehabilitation of participants of anti-terrorist operation, unfortunately, there is no strong state support for implementation of the laws that actually exist there, right? We have the law which provides for the rehabilitation, psychological rehabilitation of top participants, but it's not fulfilled as it should. So we should be. So we actually have a whole round table where people who deal with these issues are going to discuss this problem and are going to look for some ways how to overcome it, because this is really a burning issue, especially if you look and compare it to the how these issues are tackled in other countries. For instance, one of the best films, in my opinion, in our non-competition program this year is going to be screened in True or False non-competition program. It's called Of Men and War, and it shows how in USA people systemically help their war veterans. And it shows that actually, like, war veterans, they need a lot of profound psychological help. And I think that we should sort of pick up on in that direction and provide more, basically, very important and useful help to these people.
Yes, I think it's important to help them. But you mentioned migration crisis, you mentioned people caught in the war, but what other problems are covered in these discussions of yours?
Well, of course, a variety of them. For instance, we also tackle issues of ecology, right? Because this is something which is very often...
Is that a human rights problem?
Oh yeah, ecology is a human right problem, believe me, right? Your right to the clear water and clean air is a profound human right, and we should not forget about this, and we should keep fighting for that, because in contemporary world, large corporations and even some states, they basically attempt to take this right from people. And if you think about your right to clean air, in Ukraine, more and more companies and sometimes just like people locally, they just cut down the trees, and deforestation in Ukraine is quite a huge and significant problem. So we'll have a separate event dealing with that issue. And so, but that's just one example.
And what are the others?
Well, we've tackled ecology. We can also talk, for instance, about feminism. That's another important issue that I think we need to discuss more and more in Ukraine nowadays, because it's, on one hand, it's becoming more popular, but on the other hand, we need to acknowledge that we live in a bit patriarchal society. So within our human rights program, we are going to talk about such things, for instance, as feminist activism in post-conflict societies. And it's going to be a great discussion with guests from Chechnya. Yes, from Chechnya, and Ukrainian guest will be Tamila Tasheva from Kremsos. So we're going to discuss about how feminist activists, they can provide such important work as documentation of human rights violations, because women, they often have access to spheres where, for instance, male human rights activists, they cannot have access there. So female activists, because of that, they can provide more profound coverage of human rights violations. So we're going to talk about this, for instance, too.
And also about talking about females in general and political prisoners. I know you're having discussions about Oleg Sentsov, the Ukrainian director, and about Nadiya Savchenko being unjustly imprisoned in Russia. What exactly are you trying to uncover here and discuss here?
Okay, so we're going to have a round table talking about so-called political prisoners, or maybe we can even call them hostages of Russia, right? So it's going to be a round table with three basically components. So first we'll have our good partners, Center for Civil Liberties, providing us a coverage of the background information about all of the people who are currently illegally detained in Russia, providing some detailed information about who they are, because basically we tend to focus on some, so-called celebrity cases, right? But there are many more Ukrainians who are now currently
many more, which are
at least
by
25
Ukrainians.
people. Yes, so we need to talk about all of them and remember about all of them. Another highlight of this event will be a screening of the part of a rough cut of a documentary about Oleg Sentsov by Russian filmmaker Skolt Kuru. So it's and it also will be, the screening will be followed up by the discussion with Svetlana Sidorkina, who's an advocate of Alexander Kolchenko, another Crimean hostage, right? And then finally, our human rights colleagues, Committee of Solidarity, they will talk about what we can do now, because currently many people feel very disappointed and overwhelmed by all those verdicts, right, which are shocking and brutal and just unhonest, and many people feel frustrated and don't know what to do. So our colleagues who are working in the direction of providing support and expressing solidarity with all of the Ukrainian hostages in Russia, they're going to talk about what we can do next, right? How not to give up, how just to keep on working, fighting, and providing solidarity to people who are now in Russia.
Yes, also talking about Russia, are you trying to uncover problems of Russia and discuss them? Because we know that human rights in Russia are not that great. The situation with them is not that great.
Well, you know, I think that for us the most important thing is to talk about what is happening in Ukraine, right? Because it's always easy to pick on something which is obvious, right?
Yeah, right.
And Russia is a very, very easy target then, right?
Yeah,
and we all know.
It's not the only target really for your show. Nadiya, thank you very much for coming here. Thank you very much for discussing these problems, and I can only wish you good luck on dealing with these problems, because there is indeed a lot to deal with.
Thank you.
So this is it. You've been watching Viewpoint. I'm Sergey Oganessian, and I'll see you next time.